Let me do a few tricks, some old and then some new tricks. I'm very versatile.
Greetings from Castle Couric, from Vicky, Aurora, and from me. Well. I have a veritable feast of rumour and, quite frankly, ridiculous scandal that is so preposterous as to be unbelievable, except that I am sure it's going to be believed by people. So, on both sides of the Atlantic, I have to tell you, the rumour mongers are furiously at work, doing their utmost to spread every single lie that they can. And also, what's really interesting is, Stephen Colbert, you're 2 rumours out of date. You need to go back to the person you interviewed. And do you remember the one that you interviewed who was drinking beer while he was speaking to you in a supposedly empty audience with canned laughter? Now, what's his name again? Aurora? What's the name of that jerk? Harry Sussex. But before getting into any of that, I would like to announce that Dan Wooten has started up his own channel, and I wish him well, and I hope everything goes well for the future. And I am going to post something, whatever it's called, sorry, I'm so untechnological, at the end of all of this. Well, I'm not posting it, Sean is posting it. But anyway, so we wish him well, we being Aurora, Mickey and I, and I'm sure many of you as well. And let's plunge in with what Anita E. has to say. Dear Lady C, I loved seeing you with your boys, who are very handsome. Thank you very much. You mentioned Princess Olga being at the ball when discussing her grandmother's kokoshnik, which I am familiar with and is truly spectacular. If it wouldn't be asking too much, can you share a photo with us? Could you also comment on Stephen Colbert's monologue last night when he brought up the rumours about William and Rose? He interviewed Harry. Can there be a link? Can there be a link? There's no such thing as a coincidence, according to Freud. But first of all, yes, thank you very much. I will be delighted to post a picture of Princess Olga. It's going to be a picture of 4 of us. There are none of Olga and me on our own. So I'll post one of 4 hens clucking together. If I remember correctly, it's me to the left, then Carol Catherine Parsons, then Olga, then Marina Lobanov-Rostovsky. So it will all be properly described in the photograph. Okay? So delighted to do that. And yes, her grandmother's kokoshnik was absolutely spectacular. So, am I going to comment? I certainly would be delighted to. Stephen Colbert, the worst thing is to have old news. Stale. Your news is staler than bread from 3 weeks ago. Stephen Colbert got on television and in his monologue brought up and why he would bring it up now is quite beyond me, says I cynically. except that I will make the point that there has been, as I made some weeks ago and have been reiterating since then, there has been a concerted attempt and a game plan to boost the Sussexes and pile pressure on the Waleses. And is it a coincidence that Stephen Colbert now comes out with that tired rumour about William and Rose? Why am I not surprised? But what he doesn't know is it's two rumours later. Then it's earlier than the current story making the rounds. Stephen Colbert, you obviously are being played the way everybody else has been played. Poor Stephen Colbert. Those lovely rumour mongers spread another rumour after the Rose rumour. And then, when that didn't get any traction, and I actually called it out on this channel some months ago, in the last 2 weeks, they have come up with a variation on that theme and have actually been vicious, playing upon tragedy and people's grief. I'm not going to say what the rumours are. Sorry. Because certainly the last one I wouldn't touch with a barge pole at this point. It is so sick and it is so perverse and it is so unwarranted and it is so cruel. But let us remember where the Rose and William rumour emanated from. The opening of Soho House in Holland, when Meghan and Harry were there. And all of a sudden, friends of Meghan were able to spread this story. A few months ago, they came up with a variation on the story. I have to say, people who deliberately spread lies about other people are not only destructive, in my view, they are evil. You know, there is no excuse for deliberately spreading lies about a married couple, in fact, two married couples, so that you can knock one of them out of the running and say, oh, well, we're much better placed for the job because we're in love. And they're not really in love. I mean, remember Harry's comment in Spare, denigrating the marriages of his relations, basically saying they were expediencies, while his, of course, was for true love. Oh, I thought that was spelled L-U-S-T. Oh, goodness gracious me. Somebody's spelling is spot on and somebody else's understanding of the English language and of words is defective. Love is not lust. Lust for money, lust for power, lust for satisfaction. Oh dear, oh dear. Can there be a link? Does the sun rise in the east and set in the west? We all know whence the rumour originated. And how very interesting that Meghan goes on television a week ago. Oh, it's just awful when women say anything against other women, especially when I'm pregnant. But we'll get to that in a moment. Well, but on the other hand, Catherine, who's genuinely ill and recovering from major surgery, is fair game. Oh, yes. To such an extent that we now have Stephen Colbert rehashing old rumours. Pathetic. But you know, there is a game plan, as I said, and the game plan is to pile on so much pressure on William and Catherine that Harry and Meghan will be let back in part-time to continue spreading rumours and to continue making false accusations. Remember, they have neither of them yet withdrawn this accusation of racism that she and he made through amid scabies, because amid scabies didn't get it from nowhere. It had to have originated with Meghan and Harry. So let's trace the rumour back to its source. Let's move on to what Annie Whitmore has to say. Excellent video, Lady C, as always, and well done for seeing the Sussex Squad off. I commented at the end of your previous video as soon as the frankly shocking dismissal of Samantha Markle's lawsuit against her poor excuse for her sister came to my attention when the court dismissed her defamation claim. I do hope you saw it. I remain dumbfounded at the ruling and wondering if Meghan Markle will ever be made to face the consequences of her nasty, vicious, manipulative and dishonest behaviour. Much love to you and yours. It's an never-ending struggle for Meghan to avoid the consequences of her actions. And she is very adept at avoiding the consequences of her actions. In one way, but in another way, she doesn't avoid the consequences of her actions. She, through her own actions and antics, has turned herself from one half of one of the most popular couples on earth into one of the most reviled women on earth. And she can hustle those buns and shake that bod and suck up all she wants and make assertions as she pleases. The fact of the matter is, she is as transparent as freshly cleaned glass, and anybody with 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 2 brain cells figures that out very quickly. As for the ruling, we'll get to that in a question or two. SA 733 says, question, Dear Lady C, I have recently become aware that Samantha Markle's case against her sister has been thrown out. Can she get any recourse in this situation? I find the whole situation very disturbing, since the despicable duo seem to get away with everything they do, whilst those they have abused get trampled underfoot. I look forward to your response. Well, I'm going to quote what Samantha has said to me. I think it was wrongly dismissed without even hearing testimony or looking at the evidence. That is not justice. We are going to get it out there one way or another. it can certainly be appealed despite being dismissed with prejudice. I'm going to make one or two points. I'm very disappointed in Judge Honeywell because she gave every impression of understanding the realities of the case. She also has been very clever. She has done what I have seen other judges do when they want to do fancy footwork. They delay, they, in my opinion, pretend that they are giving the matter grave thought and that they are going to alight upon a considered opinion when they have most likely made their minds up pretty early on in the game. Now, people say Honeywell was an Obama appointee and that she's black, both of which are facts. You can be black and an Obama appointee and still give what I would regard as a correct judgment. Sadly, in the United States of America, too many judicial decisions are being made with political considerations. I'm not going to go into any of the others. I will stick to this one. There is no doubt that Meghan Markle defamed her sister and that she damaged her. I would have liked to have seen Judge Honeywell prove to all onlookers that she was capable of making a ruling that wasn't typical of the solidarity that many of the sub-Saharan African nations, as well as many of the African nations north of the Sahara and many of the third world nations, showed to President Mugabe and President Zuma as they were sucking their countries dry to the tunes of possibly hundreds of billions of dollars. Not a word, because we have to look out for our own. No, we don't have to look out for our own, sweetie pie, whatever our is. If something is wrong, it's wrong. And class solidarity, colour solidarity, religious solidarity are very poor excuses for failing to give justice where it is deserved. Well, Samantha is going to appeal. Let us see what happens, because November isn't that far away. Is there going to be a change of regime, or is there not going to be a change of regime? We don't know. But I have to say, the misuse that I have seen the American justice system being put to recently is, in my opinion, truly shocking. And I will call out at this time, again, Judge Kaplan for his clearly partial rulings in terms of the Prince Andrew case, excluding evidence that should have been included. And this is, in my opinion, a very similar situation. That case should have proceeded to trial. Why hasn't it proceeded to trial? Well, isn't it interesting that Meghan and Harry have an awful lot of employees that have links to the Democratic Party? Even their security is ex-Obama security. I would like to see a ruling that is free of the taint of suspicion of bias. I would like to see Meghan and Harry and other privileged people called to the bar of justice, and then have a court and possibly a jury decide on the merits of the case. Of course, this doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't happen in many countries. It doesn't happen always in the United States, and it certainly doesn't always happen here. It's really sad that on both sides of the Atlantic, our justice system is becoming so tainted that justice is no longer blind. There's no blindfold so that justice will be blind to all considerations except the case. They're busy peeping from underneath the blindfold, and every now and then doubtless issuing one tear left eye on cue. Natalie Rust says, important clarification needed. Greetings from Australia, Lady C. Greetings. I was wondering if you could clarify something for me. At the International Women's Day conference, when Meghan Markle was asked about that, oh my goodness, not that soap story again. I thought she said that the boys in her class encouraged her to write that famous letter that changed the lives of women everywhere. Didn't Meghan Markle go to an all-girls Catholic school? Caught out in a lie? Meghan Markle did go to an all-girls school. And Meghan Markle was, according to the math, by the time that event took place, very definitely at Immaculate Heart, which is an all-girls school. That is a very interesting question and very well spotted. I looked at the interview to be sure, and yes, Meghan does say that she was compelled, she doesn't use that word, but that's the message, to write the letter as a result of comments of the boys in the class. She also fudged, doubtless because it has been brought to her attention that at least one author has noticed that her dates don't add up in terms of that famous letter. And she said, she didn't say when she was 11, she fudged it and said, I don't remember the exact words that she used, but it was sort of like she was around 11. Well, President Clinton's term started in January 1993. All of this I actually covered in my book, Meghan and Harry, the real story, incidentally, in terms of how the dates don't add up and nothing really adds up. And she started at Immaculate High in 1993. So she's on the cusp of being caught out in embroidery. But as usual, Meghan is very clever about presenting things in such a way that even though the details don't add up to the facts that as she is trying to pretend they exist, there's just enough room for doubt to give her another free pass. She's very good at eking out free passes for herself. Well, the Hollywood Little Red House School is, and I think was even then, coeducational. Because if I remember correctly, the founder was inspired to start the school as a result of the mistreatment that a half Chinese child was getting during the Second World War, when, of course, the Japanese were interned. So, I think she's not exactly caught out in a lie. But again, I will reiterate what I said in my book. The dates sort of are squeezed into fitting. But what is indubitable is that Meghan claims credit through that letter that her father wrote. And her father led her to believe that Hillary Clinton and I think Gloria Allred had responded when they had not. And Meghan has believed and reiterated so often that it's become a staple. But what was really interesting in that South by Southwest Austin performance, really, was that people are wondering if Katie Couric didn't deliberately sabotage Meghan by asking the question and the way she asked it. Sort of like, well, not everybody has heard about this story. And then Meghan launches into it and again claims that she got the ad changed. Well, she can't have got the ad changed because of her own timeline. She wrote the letter and a month later the ad was changed. Well, of course, as I pointed out in my book, these things take months to go through development, the ad agency, etc., etc. And there's no way Meghan was responsible. But Katie Couric seems to have been almost mocking Meghan. And did you look at Brooke Shields' face when Meghan was speaking? She oozed distaste. She absolutely oozed distaste. Now, Brooke Shields is an accomplished actress, and she is also somebody who has been in the public eye, if not as long as I have, almost as long as I have. And I can tell you something, nobody who is practiced in the public eye is going to fail to be aware of the fact that their expression might give away their sentiments. You almost got the impression that the women, including the interviewer, who, remember, Meghan tried to hug her and she sidestepped the hug, you got the impression when you looked at that interview closely that Meghan was an embarrassment that they had to tolerate, but they tolerated her because she was a part of the show. Of course, also she and Harry had paid to be a part of the show, as had their partner in, shall we say, crime? Because I think it's a crime to try to get censorship legalized. So maybe not a legal crime, but in my opinion, a moral crime. Words Bloom says, Lady C, did you notice that for Women's Day, Meghan announced in her speech that she wanted to silence women and called upon the female executives of platforms like this one to help her accomplish this, while simultaneously shaming those same female executives for not having already silenced all female voices who criticize Meghan and call out her lies. That's not how she put it. She put it that anybody who says anything that really is not something I want to have. I mean, I'm so sweet and so wonderful. Anyway, this should have been front page breaking news. Why is the media not talking about this? She is even trying to silence her wheelchair-bound disabled sister. She speaks with a forked tongue because on the one hand, she says she's a feminist, a champion for women, a humanitarian, while calling on powerful women to silence her female critics who call out her lies. Meghan is a misogynist and a dictator, not a feminist and humanitarian. Well, I basically agree with those sentiments. I think she's dangerous, and I think that she is relentless, and I think that she has embarked upon another wave of her campaign to lay down her marker and get her own way. Everything else has failed. Hopefully this will fail too. This is hopefully one of the last rolls of a dice at the end of a card game. Hopefully. Elk Prof says, it is a chilling state of affairs when those who are meant to report the news purpose to create the news that they would best like to report. That is dastardly and treacherous. I wonder, Lady C, if you think it would be prudent to push for legislation prohibiting this, as ridiculously challenging as this might prove to be in a court of law. Surely society needs to seek protection from such malevolence as threatens the Waleses and indeed the United Kingdom. Such interference seems to be as dangerous to society and the state as is foreign interference. Well, my dear, all foreign powers interfere with each other, and any pretense to the contrary is just ludicrous. You know, you need to be very careful that you don't, in the act of trying to shut down people you disagree with and people who are clearly destructive, that you don't shut down those who are not. Censorship is something, in my opinion, to be avoided in most instances. Of course, if you are going to be breaking the law in a flagrant way and trying to, through force, get the rights of others suspended or revoked, that's one thing. But I'm actually all in favour of allowing the crazies to keep on talking. You know, if we shut them down, if we try to shut down the lies of malevolent people, except through defamation or similar already established legal courses of action, we are introducing censorship through the back door, and it's gonna come to haunt us. So no, I think, and I say this as somebody whose life was seriously damaged with the lies of my ex-husband, his brother, and the press for over 40 years, for 42 years. That was my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, towards the end of my 60s, from 24 to 66. Those are the peak years of anybody's life. Don't think I don't bitterly resent what was done to me. Nevertheless, I am here to tell you I do not think that censorship is a desirable thing. Shutting down a lot of these crazies is in itself crazy. You know, at the moment, the press, a lot of the mainstream media, and a lot of what are called sugars are trying to force the royal family to violate their privacy, to satisfy the ghoulish curiosity of people, some of whom are genuinely interested and genuinely are fond of the royal family and genuinely support the royal family. It's up to the royal family to decide how much they wish to share with the public, and it's up to the public to decide they don't like being left out of confidence. Oh, let me just confide with my 10 million best friends, sort of thing. Well, the public don't have to like it. These are all storms in teacups. You know, you need to weather storms in teacups because you need to save your strength for storms on high seas. And, you know, the press have been twisting things and demanding that Catherine and William violate their privacy. I know exactly what is what. And I don't care who doesn't believe me. I couldn't care less. And nor am I going to have my tongue forced like people who say, you know, rather stupid, childish way. Well, of course, if you really knew, you would tell us. But since you don't tell us, that means you don't really know. If they want to believe that, let them believe it. And also, while they're at it, please, there's a short queue this week at the Flat Earth Society. Join it. I back Catherine's right to maintain her privacy. I would have loved to have maintained my privacy. I would have loved to not have my literal private parts be open to public inspection. Do you have any idea how violating that is? People need to have compassion, and no matter how interested you are, if you have any modicum of decency and decorum, of course you're going to respect the fact that somebody doesn't wish to impart certain information. Well, you know, the Mother's Day photograph is something that she's done every year. She's done it herself every year. When I say done it herself, she's done it with William this year, but every year she posts a picture that either she or they take jointly. I do understand the hue and cry about the fact that the picture was edited. Isn't it peculiar, though, that Mrs. Harriman is on record as stating that not only did he edit Harry and Meghan's picture, do you remember when she was, I think it was 18 months pregnant with Lily. I think about 5 months before Lily was born. And she was 18 months pregnant with Lily. Well, she certainly looked as if she was 18 months pregnant with Lily. And he has admitted that he edited that picture. He altered the background totally. He even introduced a tree. God knows what else they edited, because that's his admission. Not one person, not one press or picture agency has objected to that picture or withdrawn it. So now let me get this straight. If you're a royal prince and princess and you have taken a picture of yourself and your family and you have edited that picture and you've done a bad enough job that people notice it, that's deserving of a kill notice. But if you are a proud, confident woman of colour being photographed by a Nigerian-born photographer and a ginger prince, it features as well. Oh, it's perfectly okay to manipulate the photograph, and that remains up. Very interesting take. Very interesting take. Marsha Bass says, sugars need to be shut down and Meghan called out for her online bullying. Meghan needs to be called out for her online bullying via her activities, and we are calling her out on it. The sugars need to be shut down. They need to be ignored. They need to be ignored. I gather that all sorts of things are said about me. I never look, couldn't care less. Let them rabbit on. Of course, if I discovered that they were saying something that I thought was actionable, that might be a horse of a different colour. But in the meantime, let them rabbit on every single time Meghan and Harry and their bots, because these are bots, swing into action. They create a whole kerfuffle. There's a whole load of controversy and activity. Then they're onto something else. They are like a tornado tearing through Missouri, uprooting houses, uprooting trees, creating havoc as they just continue down the path. Susan Boyd says, finally, a British journalist called out William for throwing his very ill wife under the bus. KP put out the fake pic and then blamed Catherine. The journalist said he was shocked how William was not a gentleman and a real cad. William is nothing without the elegant Princess Catherine. Shame on the UK for not demanding proof of life for Princess Catherine. Susan Boyd, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate your passion and emotion. First of all, William did not throw Catherine under the bus. William couldn't have said he edited the picture when he didn't. Catherine is a very strong-minded and she is her own woman. I know this as a fact. If she has elected to accept responsibility, I think we should start to respect her choice. As for proof of life for Catherine, excuse me, why should any royal or public figure who has said, I am going to have an abdominal operation, I am going to be recovering for a set period of time, I want my privacy, and I am going to not be available for however long, why should she provide proof of life? Because Conchita Crazita in Spain says that she's in a coma. I mean, some of the truly remarkable stories that have been going around. This is why I'm really surprised that Stephen Colbert isn't really up on the latest version of the William and Catherine and etc., 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 three etceteras. Rumours floating around. It's a storm in a teacup. I think it's a regrettable storm. I think it's a distasteful storm. But at least it shows people are interested. So you need to look at it from that point of view. And Catherine has already provided what you call proof of life. She was photographed leaving Windsor Castle with William. What do you want her to do now? What more than that do you want? She's been twice in the last few days photographed. Once with her mother, which I gather was an accidental photograph taken by a member of the public, but could have been a long lens, let's face facts. So, and it does not behoove one to believe everything one hears. And they were photographed leaving Windsor Castle. Why should the woman be forced to jump through hoops? I know what it's like to be forced to violate my privacy. I held out from 1974 till 1997, and it's only because of my children and to try to avoid the totally unseemly, disgusting, I won't even say interest, that ghoulish interest that the press and the obsession that they had with my, shall we say, Mexican territories. Unbelievably disgusting, but I thought, no, I have put up with this, but I'm not going to expose my children to it. And that's why I wrote an autobiography and actually came clean about I mean, nobody has a right to your private life. I mean, would you want to have your most private elements dished up for public delectation? I'm sorry. I don't think that's a reasonable proposition where any public figure is concerned. Catherine Andrzejak says, Dear Lady C, you look beautiful in that photo. I think she means the one at the ball. On another subject, what do you think is happening more? Parting in Montecito over the Mother's Day photo, or gnashing of teeth in Montecito because Princess Catherine has knocked Meghan out of the headlines? My understanding is that Meghan has such a loathing of Catherine. Meghan, as Jason Knopf said in the bullying email that he wrote to Simon Case, Meghan targets people. She has to have someone in her sights. She has Catherine. They are hoping that they will be able to shunt William and Catherine to one side, that they will so taint the Wales brand that they will be embraced back in Britain. Or somebody who knows Meghan really well said to me, there's another possibility, that Meghan is hoping that if she throws enough mud at them, not only will it stick, but that they will be so defiled that they will want to step out of the line of succession, and William would renounce on his behalf and his children's behalf their rights to the throne. So there doesn't need to be a plane crash. There can be renunciation. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Mr. DeMille, do you think I'm going to look great? You know, I need some tiaras. Mr. DeMille. It's going to be glorious. I'm going to be able to wear any tiara I want. Oh, Mr. DeMille. Grand Duchess Xenia's Koshnik. Oh, I'm going to wear that for breakfast. Oh, Mr. DeMille, wait, gosh. Finally, my moment has come. Yuma Bell says, can we now hold the UK media as members of the Sussex Squad? They certainly have proven to be, in my honest opinion. Yes, I think there is merit to that. The UK media are proving themselves to be as diabolical as they always are. And again, I qualify all of this by saying, I have suffered certainly a lot more than either Harry or Meghan at the hands of the UK media. And I still do not think they should be censored the way Harry and Meghan would like them to be censored. Have they shown themselves to be pathetic, irresponsible, hysterical, sanctimonious, plain, plumb, stupid, inhumane, and insensitive? Yes. I mean, some of their more unreasonable and bizarre comments, but it also shows how totally egotistical they are. And it also shows how entitled they are and how they justify their ravishment of other people's rights, public figures' rights, by hiding behind the skirts of the public. The public have a right to know. The public don't have a right to know. They never had a right to know anything about me, and they certainly don't have a right to know what's wrong with Catherine. None. No right whatsoever. I think their behaviour is disgusting and reprehensible. However, you know, if you are a 5'6", 128-pound woman in the jungle, and you have no protection against wild animals, except for the 6'4" hunk that spits and drools and behaves like a savage, what are you going to do? Because you have delicate manners, you're going to get rid of him? I don't think so. Because you need that savage to survive. And the public needs a free press for the democracy to survive. Now, Diane B.D. says, and this is really interesting, I believe this was done by William to more or less set the precedent, meaning if the press calls them out for it, then the press have to do the same for Hazard and Meadows. William has called out his brother and his wife out, has caught, it says called, but it means caught. Unfortunately, sometimes I think people speak their answers and think it's wrong anyway, or their questions, I should say. William has caught his brother and his wife out at their own game of photoshopping images. This means no more fake photos can be released by the Sussexes, only originals and unedited ones. If the press doesn't adhere to this, they look partial and not unbiased as they are supposed to be, in effect also outing the media for their complicity. Diane D.B. Sorry, the press is complicit. The press is not impartial. The press is not unbiased. Your theory is very interesting. In practice, I'm afraid it is extreme optimism over actual reality. Harry and Meghan will continue to Photoshop. Everybody else will continue to Photoshop. Everything else will continue to be altered. Nigerian-born photographers like Nissa Harriman will continue to confess to having doctored images. Nothing will be done because we live in a world where there are tremendous double standards. We've always lived in a world where there were double standards. It's just that the double standards have traveled downwards. And those in elite positions, in certain areas, usually in terms of royalty and aristocracy, have far fewer rights and are judged far more harshly and unfairly than everybody else. That's the reality. J.A. Gal 2 says, what do you make of Labour and the Liberal Democrats calling for the Tories to return the £10 million Frank Hester donated to them as a result of his comments about Diane Abbott? Diane is a Jamaican. You're a Jamaican. I'm a Jamaican. Oh, that's what J. Gal. Sorry, I get it. Oh, oh, I can't see the justification for so much outrage just because the man was using strong language and a figure of speech. Am I right or am I right? You definitely are a Jamaican. Aurora, you've got a Jamaican Matty, so you are Jamaican as well. Well, you're right. To those of you who don't know, oh, Frank Hester is the largest donor to the Tory party. And he was having a rant about Diane Abbott, whom I've met and whom I like, and who is a friend of friends of mine. And I don't agree with her politics, but I like her. And she and Michael Portillo have been a great double act for a long time. And Michael Portillo, of course, was a minister in Mrs. Thatcher's government. And Dan is somewhat practical. She's Jamaican, and she's practical. She sent her son to a private school, notwithstanding the fact that she was all in favor of state schools. Well, you could say that's inconsistent, or you could say that's hypocritical, or you could say that's a mother looking out for her son's best interests, or you could say it's everything. Well, Diane does have a habit of driving people crazy, it's got to be said. And because she does come out with things politically that inflame them. I have to say, when I was in the jungle, she was evidently absolutely wonderful about me, and I thank her for that. They're trying to say he was racist, and Diane has actually reported him to the police for making a racist comment. Excuse me. I mean, Dan, come on. You can do better than that. I know you're a politician, but really, calling him out for being a racist when he makes it absolutely clear he's not a racist. Come on, you can do better than that. But she is a politician, and she's taking advantage of the wound that she can inflict upon an opponent. So, I mean, let's face facts. She's very astute. She did send her son to private school. So I suppose I'm being naive in expecting Dan to not make hay while the sun shines, especially when Frank Hester has given her the dagger which she can then use to eviscerate him. Well, I'm going to read out what he said, because it's like trying not to be racist, but you see Diane Abbott on the TV and you're just like, you just want to hate all, and he says, women of a certain complexion, which I'm not going to repeat what he says, but which Diane is one of. The other sort of Jamaican to mine. Let's put it that way. This being YouTube, one needs to be careful. You want to hate all certain type of women. Women because she's there. And I don't hate all, and he uses the word again, it's one of Meghan's favourite colours. Well, on dresses. She doesn't like it when people accuse her of being it, but on dresses. And I don't hate all women at all, but I think she should be, and then he says, a four-letter word beginning with S, and then you have hot after it. Then he says, speaking about, he's actually referring to an executive that he doesn't like who is black. And he says, and mentions the executive's names. And Diana need to be, and he says again, hot with an S in front of it. Well, it's clearly a figure of speech. I mean, people of a certain generation, it's a very common expression to say they should be put against a wall, and it's a figure of speech. Have we reached the pass in this world nowadays that people can't emote and have figures of speech that are descriptive and clearly emotive and clearly convey your strong feelings about somebody, and that are not racist, and you're accused of racism, and then Dan is going to the extent of reporting him to the police? I mean, insofar as I'm aware, it was a private conversation. It wasn't a public conversation. We need to have respect for people's right to emote and to describe and to indulge in figures of speech. And J.A. Gal too, thank you very much. I think you're absolutely right. You are right. And on that note, I will say thank you so much for listening to this. I hope that this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to speak about. Okay, thank you so much. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care.